Welcome to Breaking Initiative. Don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube. We are on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify. My name is Brett.
And I'm Rob. This is the show where we break down our own tips and tricks to help you get the most out of your tabletop games. We share some of our favorite tools from around the community, discuss some of our past experiences, as well as new things currently happening in the hobby. And you might be wondering if you have a very avid eye, a very keen eye. We're wearing the same shirts as we were last video. That's because we're continuing our series, and we've done this all in one take, and we're just splitting it up. And this is the second part in our series we have not named yet. I'm sure we named it last week, but we're technically in the past. This is past us coming at you right now, and we have no idea what we're going to name this video. But this is definitely a series about talking about all the classes in Dungeons & Dragons.
Pros and cons.
I think we left off... Yep, pros and cons. I like that. We're probably going to throw that in the video last week.
That should totally be in the title, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, somewhere in
maybe
there.
Maybe not.
We did all the pros and cons, just shooting from the hip, hot takes of Barbarian, Bard, Cleric, and Druid in the last video. And we're going to continue with this video for as long as it takes to go to 30 minutes. Hopefully we can get them all done. Maybe not. Maybe we'll take this even further.
Part 3sies. Maybe we do a quad saga. Nope. What's a saga but for four? What's a foursies? Do they just call it a foursies?
Quadrilogy. Or I like foursies better though.
I should call it a foursies. Pirates of the Caribbean. It's a foursies. It's not a quadrilogy. Right. It's called a foursies. That does not sound appropriate. Don't Google that. Okay. All right. We will start with the first one.
Yeah.
Fighter.
Actually, one of my favorite classes. I think that it gets the worst rap of all of them. People kind of consider... You call the Barbarian the simple class, but I think people think of Fighter as the incredibly boring, generic default class. In fact, I would even say that in 2nd edition and before that, it was considered the default class. There was no such thing as a commoner. Everybody who wasn't a level 1 character or up was a level 0 fighter, because that was that generic. You were basically, you're a fighter that doesn't do the fighter stuff yet. You're about to learn it or do something else. So fighter has always gotten this bad rap of being the thing that you do if you don't want to learn very many rules, the thing that you want to pick if you don't have any good ideas, the thing you want to pick if you just want to be the main character who uses a sword and a shield. And I think that it is high time that is abolished, that whole idea. I think a lot of people make barbarians that could have been better at being a fighter, their concept that they had for their character. And a lot of other classes. You can make my favorite thing to do, I can make a whole video about fighters and expounding on all the stuff we can do with that. Archers, you can do so many things better than other classes with fighter. A tactician, which is what my character is, a sort of tactical thinker kind of fighter, because that's just what he does. But Brett, pros and cons.
Okay, so here's the thing. Yes, 100% I agree. We need to get out of that where fighter is the simple, easy class to just give everybody. Because there are so many decisions to make. Well, there are more decisions to make. It's not the fact that they are complicated. It's the fact that they're not the easiest class. And really, once you get going in fighter, then you get, 2 attacks and 3 attacks and 4 attacks. And then bonus actions and extra things to do with your bonus actions, 3 attacks. And then freaking go... gunslinger, and it's attacks, bonus, and then also grit points, and then also on top of other things. I have yet to play a fighter full out to where I could even hash it out totally. But as much as how I see it, if you were a very beginner and you were given a fighter, I wouldn't worry too much, because I think as you get better, as you go to 5, 6, 7 sessions, you will get the cadence of D&D in your table, and I think you will be okay being a fighter. But just the fact that if your DM says, hey, I'm giving you fighter because it's the it's the easiest thing for me to give you. I'm like, well, it's actually not true, Mr. DM. There's a lot more complicated things in a fighter than I think even a barbarian, and later on I think we'll talk about even a monk that are just given to you. Yeah, go ahead, Rob. You just look like you got
I call them passive traits. You know, I think we said it a lot in the last video, things that they just give to you. These are things that, like, you don't choose to do it. You don't pick to decide that you're going to do this in this turn with this bonus action or action. It is something that just makes you more powerful or better at something.
Yeah.
Similar to how a rogue has expertise. That's a passive trait. Fighter, especially if you pick champion as your subclass, you are going to find and that actually is, I would say, counter to what you were saying a moment ago. Champion fighter, very easy to play, extraordinarily approachable. You just increase your stats, choose to attack things, and use your skills and ability scores. That's it. That's really all they do.
But there's no martial adept with champions?
That's Battlemaster. Battlemaster is the complex one, where you can kind of craft your own subclass almost by picking all these tactician kind of moves. It's almost like you're playing checkers when everyone's playing chess kind of thing, where you can even now expanded in Tasha's give people other attacks, which was something that the Warlord could do back in 4th edition, and a lot of just really interesting things you can do with it. It brings back the cleave.
So champion is, if you're going to go easy,
literally, yes. Highly recommend for anyone that doesn't want to learn anything about Dungeons and Dragons and just wants to play a fighter.
Wow. Okay. Honestly, Rob, I was still thinking barbarian monkish, but champion, everything's given to them. There's no real choices. But what about whenever it's their turn at the table? Mm-hmm. How many things are on the table for them to do? Let's say level 10. You know what I mean? Action, bonus action, movement.
Right. So if you're not, so you're right. You do have some things still. You have the ability to do your action surge, which just gives you another action. The greatest thing about fighter, really.
Yeah.
Getting another action. You get all of your bonus attacks, extra attacks on top of it. It just dominates. And you're the perfect tank, in my opinion, where you have even better armor class usually than a barbarian. Not quite as good HP, but
barbarians have the half damage.
Right, they do have that going for them as well. Fighters make up for that by having the ability to heal themselves with their second wind, as well as some other unique things that they can pick for themselves, especially if you pick a battle master. And also, even there's some spell casting fighters, the Eldritch Knight, I believe. Yeah. And that's an often overlooked one because it's one of the originals.
I'm so dumb, Rob. We did a one-shot a few months ago where I played the Echo Knight from Wildmount. I played that, and it was actually Rick and Morty. That's what it was, the Rick and Morty campaign.
It was Rick and Morty, yeah.
Yeah, where I was an Echo Knight. That was a lot of fun because I get the Echo Knight thing. There's definitely some depth, especially as it goes more and more into a fighter of like crazy fun things. Also, really quick, I'm going to totally shout out this Nerdarchy. They came out with a staff, like a staff video. If you're going to have a quarterstaff, who's the best person? What's the best class? Multi-class? All of these things, and they very rarely do this. They were like, yeah, we very rarely do this, but it's actually fighter all the way through. It's just. I think it's a battle master fighter the whole way. If you want to have a bow staff, it's not being a monk, it's not being anything else. It's being a fighter all the way through. You're going to be able to do the best damage and all to mid max it. So pros and cons. After we talk about all of this, I'm going to say the pros: crap ton of damage. I know. Let's go back to Critical Role because we quote it all the time. Highest damage dealt, level 20. Percy did it. Percy, he did it. It was 140 damage in a round, and he is a gunslinger, level 18 or 20. I can't remember what they were.
For anyone who doesn't know, that's a fighter subclass that is
it's a fighter sub.
D&D Beyond. That's not the officially published one, but it is. Yeah,
I think it is now.
It's not published in a book, but it's
ever
on
since
D&D
Wildmount came out, is that not because of Wildmount come out? Does that not now make it official?
No, they didn't. It wasn't included in that. I wonder if they will eventually, though. Yes,
it is super powerful, and I believe
not
a
as
lot
much
of the other
as
ones
reliably consistent high damage as Rogue, but can really, as far as a tank goes, really get in there and do a bunch of damage. And I guess now I know that they're also really good at quarterstaffs. I'll check that video out by Nerdarchy later.
They're the ones that did the research.
It makes sense.
Go watch their stuff.
Because you get that quarterstaff feat, and then you get that extra attack with it, and all sorts of crap. I'm sure.
Oh yeah. And so the pros, you hit a bunch of damage. You can take a lot of damage. For me, the cons might come to role playing. Is there maybe it kind of makes you kind of seem like I'm the fighter. It's what I do. You maybe won't come across. Again, role playing kind of can be subjective. I mean, it's just an opinion side of things. It's what I see. I know when people play them, they kind of dive in the idea of lacking a little bit of charisma in these kind of things. But honestly, you could role play however you want. I think Percy also is a good example of that. Percy. So stupid.
Right.
But he's obviously an amazing role player, and he was a fighter.
Fighter, I can think of a big con. I would say, first of all, I have the opposite opinion about the role playing. Maybe it's because I'm biased and I'm playing one, but I feel like a fighter can be taken in so many directions because it's so vague about what it does. You could be somebody from the military. You could be somebody who's like some sort of gladiator. You could be a bodyguard. You could be just some guy. Like, that's the one to pick if you're just some guy who's not a rogue.
You could just be a dad with a van.
it just works out,
It just works out.
And doesn't even have to be strength based. Exactly. Dexterity based ones are very viable. But this is where the con comes in, because you're going to have a high constitution and either strength or dexterity. So that's your two really high stats, both in physical stuff. You're not getting a lot of great skill choices from just fighter. So you have to, if you want to get something, you have to get it from probably your background. That's not one of the more athletic focused ones. And when you hit that point and you've put all your stats into those physical stats, often people neglect the other ones. And even myself, I ran into this trying hard with my current character to do it. I had to come up with a reason why my character wasn't very charismatic, even though because I wanted him to be very intelligent in addition to two of those three physical stats. He needed to be very intelligent. So I made him, down the middle, average dexterity. Wouldn't you know it, everything in Strahd seems to be dex-based saving throws.
Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of 5e. That's kind of 5e.
Yeah, that's fair. That's very fair. So I walked into that one. But when you have one of those other stats also wanting to be high, now you got to kind of pick something to not be good at. So I had to, he had some sort of past experience that makes him kind of like freeze up and not say what he wants to and hold back and stuff. So that's how I play up his low charisma, even though he's a smart guy, who's also ridiculously strong, 20 strength. But yeah. So you don't get a lot to play with as far as the other stats. You kind of are in a physical frontline kind of position, and you have to be creative to work yourself into a creative role-playing type of character. But it's certainly not impossible, and I challenge anybody to try to go against that stereotype.
We're keeping it going. Okay.
Don't lose your earbud.
Don't lose the earbud, right? Oh, I love that. Let's go to Monk.
All right, Monk. So we just talked about Fighter, which was my current character.
My character is a monk. I will tell you, the fun thing about a monk You get to do a lot of stuff. The cool thing is you do some crazy stuff, and things are kind of just given to you. You know, eventually you just have evasion. Didn't have to take the feat, you just have it. Or is that a feat, right, Rob?
It's not really a feat. It's a you get it at 7th level, I think. You get the evasion class feature.
Yeah, whatever. You just get it. You have it. You get it. Eventually, you become pure. I can never be poisoned. All these things. All of these things are kind of just given to you, and then you get to do some crazy cool stuff. Run straight up a wall as much as your speed is. Your speed constantly increases. The idea of being able to move around the battlefield is really good. The Drunken Master Monk, the really cool thing about him, whenever I do my Flurry of Blows, which is their go-to thing, I get to get an extra 10 feet of movement and free disengage, so I can literally just keep moving around. I'm at 50 feet right now, and whenever I do Flurry of Blows, I'm at 60 feet of movement per turn, and it's just... Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, and it's very versatile. Here's the problem with it. So that's all the positive. Problem with it, I would say you hit okay. You get to do a bunch of hits. You get to roll a lot of dice. That's the fun part.
Yeah.
You get to do a lot of little hits. You're going to wind up doing some damage every turn, most likely. You're not going to do a lot. You're not going to do a big hit. If we're at level 10, if I can get over 30 damage in a turn, I'm happy. That's not very high. It's okay. I think there's somebody that did back in like level 5. One of the clerics did. What's the one with the bell ringing as it? I can't remember. But it was tons of damage. That's how she explained it. Don't ask. Anyways, Flair. So the negatives about it, you're not going to hit very much. You're not going to hit very high. It's probably one of the lowest hitting classes, I believe. You get to roll a lot. Probably one of the lowest hitting classes. Yeah. And you're just not quite as good as a rogue at everything.
But you get to move around a lot more. Like, it's more about control over, like, the battlefield. And for a melee character, no one else does it like a monk does.
Stunning Strike is amazing. Like, Stunning Strike, as that being, like, you hit, they roll a con save, they fail that, they are now stunned for that turn, they can do nothing. That's amazing. The problem with it is it's a low DC. It's like 14. At least the way my guy's built, it's at 14. In Critical Role, it wasn't really high either. And she was almost kind of mid-maxing, her character. And so it's not a very high thing, but when it does hit, it's awesome.
Right.
And the negatives, you don't really hit very high. And you kind of just you do feel like, this is my thing. I eventually multi-classed into a druid, and I talked about it in the very beginning of our campaign. Yeah. I wasn't going to multi-class. I'm going to play it all the way through. And then we get to level 9, and I'm like, kind of keep doing the same thing. I'm just going to make myself even just more of a utility person, and I'm going to add spells to this whole thing. Because I knew that later on down the road, I'm going to hang on to this to be a monk. I'm not going to hit much harder than where I'm already hitting. So at least I might add a little more utility. That was my logic going into it. So you can hear the negatives of, like, I'm going to tap back into monk, but you can hear the negatives is what I'm saying of, like, okay, I kind of did my thing at roughly level 8. You know what I mean? Yeah.
It's neat. It's fun. My time I've played as a monk. I'd say that when you have your resources, that's the pro of the class. When you have your key point pool filled, but once that's when you get your flurry of your blows and all of your other special abilities. The 4 elements, and what's the other one that does it? I want to say, gosh, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head.
Sun Soul,
I think. Yeah, they have like these ranged attacks and stuff where they can like really kind of like add to that monk stuff. Maybe even kind of like spells, but you're still limited by your key pool. That's the biggest disadvantage. I wish that they had more things that they could do that are monk-like things without dipping into the key points.
The problem is, listen, at level 17, Sun Soul Monk, they get the 5-finger death palm from Kill Bill. Death punch from Kill Bill. That's pretty much what they get. Automatic. If they fail, they die. If they succeed, they get 10 D10 of radiant damage, I believe. And then there's another monk that does 10 D10 of necrotic damage. Roughly the same as that kind of thing. That's great. That's level 17. We've talked about, we're at playing for 3 years, and we my guy kind of metagaming. He kind of possibly talked about, I might go to level 20. I might stop soon. He doesn't know. We've been playing for, it's so hard to get to that level and to do that. And by the time you get there, it's going to hit for cool. I'm glad it exists, but it's the cool thing is way at the end. Way at the end. I mean, I say that. There are many other cool things. I'm going to tell you guys this. The reason why I picked Monk, Drunken Master, Tipsy Sway. When somebody misses me, I spend a key point as a reaction. That miss, if there's somebody else next to me, it hits them instead. I just thought that was cool, kind of Jackie Chan-like. I was like, done. I'm just going to not even think about my character, and I'm just going to go with it. That was cool. But
speaking of that kind of archetype, though, goes back to what I said in the last video about Druid. That's probably, from the RP standpoint, that's my biggest complaint, is that you're kind of limiting where your background is. You can come up with some sort of wandering monk thing, but really somebody had to have taught you from some sort of monastery or place.
Right.
That's where you came from to learn these very specialized things. You could say the same thing about cleric, I guess, but there's such a variedness to the clerics. But monks and druids, they came from a specific place that's written into the story of the game. If you want to change it, you got to talk to your DM about changing what it is in the setting. It's the way it goes. There's one more class. Start guessing what it is. Write it in the comments. What do you think that the third one is going to be that I have to say about that?
We're going right into it.
Definitely monk falls in the same category for me.
I think we're going right into it.
You'd think so.
Nope, it's 2 from now. I think it's 2 from now.
Stop it.
Okay, let's go into Paladin.
Yeah.
We're at 22 minutes-ish. We're not really at 22 minutes. Or 22 minutes on my timer, which is completely separate.
Let's do 12 more. We got this.
Done. Dunsies. Okay, Paladin. Pros and cons. Go, Rob, go.
This used to be one of my favorite classes, actually. Pros. It's a very like fighter. It's very meaty and heavy, and it uniquely has the ability to lay on hands, which isn't something you just roll. You literally just decide how many hit points that you're going to give yourself or someone else. It has probably my biggest con with it is the lack of versatility. I find some people will probably disagree. This is my hot take, I guess. The versatility between the different subclasses. I wish there was more variedness. They're really just changing their channel divinity and the aura that you get later on. Mm-hmm. It's very samey on all of them. Like some of them are like vengeful, or some of them are merciful. They all kind of have very very similar things. They just do the same things in slightly different ways. At least from like the 6 or 7 of them I've looked at. Less exciting in 5th edition than I think they were in previous editions. But I still like them. I still like them a lot. I love it when people play them, because you know that it's going to be somebody with you got to be somebody who plays up the passionate part of like the RP, because they got like, that's really their focus. They're lawfully aligned to an ideal, and that focuses them right into the campaign. You know how to guide that person as the DM.
Yes. I like the stretching of the idea of playing a paladin that's not like the trope of a paladin, like the norm. That's just a guy, whatever, however the heck he's dressed or whatever he's doing. He's not this, haha, I am the knight in shining armor, I'm here to fight for the Lord, or whatever the heck he's doing. Lysander, that's from Midsummer Night's Dream, Brett. What are you talking about? What's the god, the guy that's not, dude, it sounds like Lysander. Rob?
I don't know what you were talking about.
I don't know which one
yet.
No, the god in D&D that sounds...
Oh, Lathander?
Lathander. I'm not crazy, guys. It's close.
Yeah, That's the character, the one that my character worships. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't I was in a Midsummer Night's Dream. Sorry, I knew that there was a character in. Anyways, yeah, Lathander. So I love that idea of actually breaking that and just in some way, maybe that's where you go vengeful or whatever the other subclasses are. Pros, big hitter, of course, with the smites, and they great thing to multi-class into as well, I think. The cons, you don't really have any stats left over for intelligence and wisdom. Like, unless you roll for stats, you really won't have any stats left over to where you're for sure going to be. Those are either going to be your jump stats.
So it falls into a little bit of that thing
10.
with fighter. Yeah, but at least it gets into the charisma.
You have to have charisma. Yes, you have to have charisma. Yeah, and the things you most likely aren't going to have dexterity. Right. Most likely.
Yeah.
There's custom. You could definitely think of something fun to make. Obviously, you could sit down and actually, churn out something that has dexterity based. Paladin
based cleric would be, or paladin would be very interesting. I wonder if that's even viable.
I don't know. I don't know what you would do. I don't know, but I don't know. Okay, so the cons lacking. You'll definitely be short in some stats, like in mind stats for sure.
Everything besides charisma, I guess, because you're going to need constitution again. All the classes really need at least a good constitution, but the tanky ones really got to have a high one. So you got your 3 high stats right there.
Okay, here's going to be the next one that I believe is your one that you're going to be like, oh yeah, Brett, of course, Ranger.
Right. So, this used to be your favorite class, I think. I have a theory it was.
Every time I started with Ranger, I always just thought, I'm going to be Lord of the Rings, Aragorn. I'm the Ranger in the back, and I'm cool. And I guess I have an animal. I went Beastmaster. My first long campaign, I was Beastmaster Ranger. It was so bad. I had to spend my action for my animal to do something. I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all. My bonus action, and it can hit instead of me, and I'm like, it wouldn't do anything. So, pros of Ranger: if you're out in the wilderness, kind of like a druid, you're going to be wisdom based. You do have some spells. You're going to be very knowledgeable out in the wild. I would even say the cool pro about the Ranger is if you have your, let's say, whatever the normal standard array of stats, and you do them kind of mid-maxy-ish, maybe with no dump stats, you're going to feel pretty comfortable if you're in the wild. You're going to feel like, hey, this is kind of my home. That is definitely a positive. And with your attacks and what you do, you hit okay. You can hit okay. You could hit in the 40s. You know what I mean? Roughly around level 9 and 10, sporadically. But other than that, I mean, there's not really anything super great except for whatever you want to do as a role playing situation.
I find actually it's funny you say that, and you thought that this is the one I was talking about, but no. No, actually, I think that Ranger, like Fighter, is very underutilized and really has a lot of potential to be able to be used in varying ways. I think a lot of people make Rangers when they probably could have made a Fighter, because they just want to be an archer.
They just want to Legos.
I think Fighter does Archer way better. It
does, 100%. The videos are out there. The evidence is out.
But Ranger is a really cool character for the Wanderer, and for most campaigns, I find that can mean a lot of things. People often will be like, "Well, what background do I pick?" I guess Outlander, because it's like, it's like, "Oh, I'm a cleric. I guess I'll pick Acolyte." That's the stuff I always try to avoid. Right. And you can find some really interesting stuff, like you make some sort of elven sage or something, right? And he's maybe some sort of messenger or something. You trades in different information, like or tries to go delving into the woods to find the information that's missing. Maybe he's the kind of ranger that isn't a woods ranger. Like, you have to be a little creative with some of it, but maybe he's a detective. This is a perfect detective class next to rogue, but this is a cool one because it employs like a lot of magic and stuff too, and a lot of like classic sort of like bloodhound style hunter kind of like almost like a bounty hunter kind of tracker. And a lot of your stuff is going to be, at least in a classic campaign, a lot of overland travel to get to your goals, at least in a lot of the ones I play. And having somebody like that just makes sense. It doesn't stick out as weird to me.
Right.
And you can, I feel like there's a lot to do with it. It leaves a blank slate for you to fill in with a lot of creative details. And it doesn't say, you came from the Ranger College and learned all of, none of that stuff.
Yeah. One of the things I find actually kind of cool for the Ranger, for DMs, actually, NPCs. Which sounds kind of lame, like just throw them in the NPC pile. But I think if a DM wanted to, like, I don't have a lot of time to make a character that I want to put in, like I feel like you can kind of have that Ranger be like a cool information giver. Yes, a wizard can do that. Almost all, but like, they're out in the wilderness. It's like, they find somebody who's hunting or something like that. It's like, I feel like it's a cool idea for an NPC as well. Because
I think I've done that many times, actually. It's just, I would even call it a welcome cliche.
A welcome cliche. Right. Yeah. So, in a weird way, we're talking about as many positive things about the Ranger as we can. Because the negative truly is their. Me personally, as I played them, I feel like I was missing out. I feel like, if I wanted to be an archer, even though I know Ranger, you can go in the dual hitsies, twosies. Yeah. That's what it's called. Read it in the book. Hitsies, twosies. With 2 melee weapons. If you wanted to be a bow fighter, an archer, I think honestly just go fighter. That's really the route you want to go.
Not to say that you shouldn't use a bow as a ranger. It's just that they're more specialized. They're using their bow for a lot of their spells. They can use their bow for a lot of controlling of combat.
What is it? Hail of Thorns. Hail of Thorns. That's going to be
Hail
for
of
sure
Thorns
the
is what I was thinking
go-to.
of in particular. Yeah.
The go-to spell. That's going to it's kind of cool. You have like some utility stuff, but you only get like 2 or 3 spell slots. Yeah. You don't get a lot of spell slots. And I'm talking about level 10, level 11, maybe level 8, maybe at one point. Not a lot. So they're okay. The negative about them is like, unless you really play into the character and the role playing, which that's subjective, and you guys could do that. Mid-max wise, like what's going to be the best? They're not going to be the best. I don't think at any specific thing.
I like Hunter. I'll say that's my favorite subclass on them when I was and the Gloomstalker. I've seen somebody play that one pretty viably in one of my last campaigns. I
was DMing. Somebody played Gloomstalker. Very cool. Go in and out of shadows. That gets tricky. Because then it's like every conversation, is this shadowy enough for me to go in between and teleport DM? And then the DM has to go like... Are we using the light
mechanics, or is it just always shadowy?
Right. And so, I don't know. I feel like whenever there's those like rules, it's like, I don't want to have... I don't like conflict.
I want to see somebody pull off a really awesome Swarm Keeper. If anybody remembers the pain from Metal Gear Solid 3, I want to see that.
I think the subclasses they've built recently have tons of potential. They have tons of potential, and hey, I don't want to ever say this now, but 6th edition comes out, maybe they'll do something else that's going to really help the Ranger. Yeah. Other than that, you have to be really creative. Things aren't going to be just given to you as the Ranger to make it really work, I don't think. So, all right. 34 minutes, Rob, ish.
Oh boy! Did we actually do 1, 2, 3, 4? Okay, we did 4 again.
Do you want to do
Okay.
you want to do the next video and do the last 4?
No, I think 35 minutes is a great place to stop it.
All right. I'll wrap it up. Guys, like, subscribe. We're on YouTube. Do the subscribes, obviously, because you're watching. Like down below. Google Play, Apple Podcast, Spotify, anywhere else you probably get it. Just give us a search, and we might be there. That'll be cool. Yeah. Thanks, guys, for watching. See you on the part 3.
Yep, see you in part 3.